easy for us to finish. Um, we mentioned that we weren't supposed to have envy between the Muslims, that we weren't supposed to essentially cheat each other when someone is in the middle of a business deal or business transaction and he's trying to finish, and you kind of come in and undercut him to end up raising the prices on him. Because again, this is going to hurt him or her. Um, and then the last thing we mentioned before we broke off was not hating each other, right? And this is something that unfortunately is more common in the Muslim community than we think. It is more common in the Muslim community than we think. But that's why we're studying this. That's why we're looking at this, to see where do we square up and where do we line up with the legacy of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And are we, according to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, are we where we think we are and where we think we should be? So you want to always, the point of these courses or these classes is that you look at yourself and you see this is what the Prophet ﷺ says, or this is what the Prophet ﷺ does in these scenarios, in these situations, right? Or these, right? And where am I in that? Is that how I react? Is that what I do? Is that what I say? And if the answer to yourself, and of course, only you know yourself best, right? Is that you, when you answer that question, if the answer comes back no, then you're trying your sincere, utmost best to try to keep it in line with what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has, right? And when it came to his Muslim brothers and his sisters, his followers, the companions, right? He had nothing but love for them. Even if he reprimanded them, even if he had to correct them, it was out of nothing but love. And there were some times where the Prophet ﷺ, he would have to tell somebody about themselves. Like, listen, this role, this is not for you. You can't do this. That's not your strong suit. You need to do something else. For example, he told one of the companions, I don't want to say the wrong one, but he told them, right, that you should never be in charge of 3 people, right? Leadership, that's not your strong suit, right? But in terms of that companion's ibadah, his worship, and his dedication to, the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he was almost unsurpassed amongst many of the companions. But when it came to leadership, that wasn't his strong suit. But the Prophet ﷺ only told him that out of love. Because ideally, you tell someone what you would want them to tell you. If I had some shortcomings, if I have some mistakes, if I have something, I would want someone to tell me, to help me fix that, to cut, you know what I'm saying, so that I don't fall into those things again. So then, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. There we go. All right, so then he goes on. Do not be envious of one another. Do not hate one another. Do not keep away from one another, and one interfere in the transaction of another. Now, keeping away from one another is essentially not boycotting, abandoning someone, right? Not talking to your brother or sister for days or even months or weeks, right? This is something that you shouldn't do. If you have an argument, if you have a disagreement, right, be the first one to apologize. You're not a little person for doing that. You're not a lesser person for doing that. Matter of fact, the exact opposite. The Prophet ﷺ teaches, right, that the one who humbles himself, man tawada'a lillah, the one who has humility in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah will raise and elevate that person. So you having a disagreement with a brother or sister, and then you going out of your way to say, I'm sorry for my part, for whatever it was, right? That's not lessening yourself. If anything, you are being raised and elevated in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that's what really matters, right? And so when you are doing that for the sake of brotherhood, for the sake of sisterhood, for the sake of Allah, Allah will elevate you and raise you. You should be slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, brothers to one another. And the Prophet ﷺ, he reminds us of our common origin and ancestry, that we are slaves. All of us are slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not our ancestry, but our role and our place. He reminds us of our role and our place, that we are all slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So if you were to ever look down on someone and think less of someone, remember, you are a slave and a servant too. And even though in today's terms, that doesn't sound good in our ears, that someone calls us abd or slave or servant. But the good thing is, and the beautiful thing is in Islam, is that when you are a slave and a servant to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that frees you from being a slave and a servant to anything else. I'm not a slave and a servant to fashion. I'm not a slave and a servant to money. I'm not a slave and servant to the fashion of the day, or, you know what I'm saying, what's viral, or what everybody else is doing, or peer pressure, or what my boss tells me, or what my work is insisting that I do. I'm not a slave to any of those things. So that when I make a decision and I do something and I make a move, whether it's for me or it's my family, my wife, my children, right? I am a slave to Allah. So all my decisions are made in that interest, not for someone else. So if it happens to contradict my boss, I'm sorry, it is what it is. My boss tells me, we don't pay you to pray. Where are you going? What do you mean you're leaving for Jumu'ah? I'm not a slave to my paycheck. I would appreciate if you make some accommodations for me that I can leave for an hour and come back. I would love to work with you. You're not able to do that for me? Then thank you for allowing me to be here. I appreciate it, but I can't stay here. This place is not for me, because I'm not a slave to you. I'm a slave to Allah al-Razaq. He's the one who cuts my paycheck, not you. So my rizq, if it comes from you, alhamdulillah. But if you're not able to accommodate me and my responsibility to Allah, my rizq will come from somewhere else. It is not only written from you, said company, right? If there's a conflict with me and my wife, if there's a conflict with anyone else, whatever it might be, I'm not afraid of the police. I'm not afraid of anything, because all of these things, right? I'm not a slave to them. Some people, they're even slaves to their own desires. And they seemingly can't help themselves. And they have compulsions. And they do things. You'll see somebody who may be akramakumullah, who might be addicted to pornography. They're a slave. Their desire wants something, and they seemingly can't stop themselves. They're a slave to that thing. But when you're a slave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you know about the punishment that comes with someone indulging in something like that, the way that seeing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or understanding that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees you wherever you are, and not wanting your master, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to see you in such a compromising position that you would say, I'm not a slave to that. I'm not a slave to whatever it might be. And so being a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frees you from being a slave to anything else. It is actually emancipating you from being a slave of anything else. Tayyib. So he reminds us of that, and he tells us, be brothers to one another, right? A Muslim is a brother to another Muslim. He should not be unjust to him. He should not cheat him. He should not wrong him. He should not lie to him, right? That he should never desert him, lie to him, nor despise him. And then the Prophet ﷺ mentions a taqwa ha-huna, piety, righteousness, God consciousness is in here. And what is the significance of it being here? And the Prophet ﷺ pointing to the chest, the heart. Because, brothers and sisters, just like we said, you can say brother and you can say sister, but if your heart is not in the right place, if your heart does not truly believe that and genuinely believe that, then your limbs will not act that brotherhood out. Your feet will not be carrying you to places to help with donations, or to help to make da'wah, or to help to support your brother or sister in the ways that they meaningfully need to be supported. Your hands will not serve them, help them, look out for them. Your tongues will not say supportive words, helpful words, good words for them, right? Because your heart. That's why he said that taqwa ha-huna, right? And I'll give you a quick analogy. The heart to the body is like a general to his soldiers. And I ask all of you, the general, in relationship to his soldiers, what is his role and responsibility? The general, what's his role? And it's not rhetorical, I'm asking you. To give orders, to give commands. You go run reconnaissance over here. You outflank the enemy over here. This battalion, you attack them here, right? You set up a perimeter and a defense over here, but he gives commands. Tayyib. Now, in that same relationship, the soldiers in relation to the general or the commander, what is their job? to follow orders, to obey. All right? Now, what's that got to do with the heart and the body? And the Prophet ﷺ saying, the taqwa hahuna. Well, we said the heart, right? He's the same or analogous to the general and the soldiers. The heart is the general, and your limbs, your eyes, your ears, your tongue, your hands, your feet, they are the soldiers. If you have true love, first and foremost for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then for your brothers and sisters, then your hands will carry that out. Your feet will carry that out. Your tongues will carry that out. Your ears even. If you hear somebody speaking ill of your brother or sister, you'll be like, I can't listen to you backbite my brother. Someone comes and spreads to me, do you know what the imam said? Did you hear what he did? Did you hear what that board member said? Oh, subhanallah, astaghfirullah. If that was me, no, we could never, da-da-da-da-da. Did you hear what brother so-and-so said? Did you hear what his wife is going on? Your ears, you would be like, I can't, right? Because your heart is telling him that. That's not. Y'all understand that? And that's the relationship with brotherhood, sisterhood, and taqwa. What you really have in your heart, it will be displayed on your limbs. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he goes on, it is sufficient for a person as a sin that he holds his brother or sister in contempt, right? This is considered a sin, that you belittle your brother or sister, you look at them lowly, that they're beneath you, that they're better than you, you're better than them, right? This is what Shaitan did. This is what Shaitan did with our father Adam alayhi salam. He said, Ana khayrun minhu. He's less than me. Khalaqtani min narin. You created me from fire, O Allah. Wa khalaqtahu min teen. And you made him from like clay, dirt, and dust. And that same perspective and lens, you'll see sometimes Muslims looking at each other that way. Doesn't this brother know I'm a doctor? Doesn't he know I'm a lawyer? Doesn't he know how much I donate to the masjid? How can he talk to me this way? This guy. Or even an imam. Who does this brother think he is talking to me, advising me, correcting me? This hadith is weak. This is this and this. Oh, this is a different opinion. How dare he talk to me this way? Doesn't he know who I am? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, this is enough of a sin with the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah despises. This is a kibr. And someone who has any type of arrogance, even a speck of arrogance, they will not enter into paradise. Even a speck of arrogance. The opposite of humility and humbleness. Going on, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, all things of the Muslims are sacred, sacrosanct. They are sacred. They are holy. And he mentions three things. That you and I, when we look with each other, there are three things that are sacred to us. His blood. I would never harm you. I would never beat you, cut you, attack you, kill you. The Muslims, they shouldn't do that to each other. Because the blood of one another is sacred. It is sacred. Secondly is the wealth, that you would never steal from each other, that you would not, in your business dealings, that you would, I got over on him and I got some extra money out of him. And what's the big deal? All the Muslims are doing it. La la la. Or all the people are doing it. No. Because that's my brother, I would never cheat him in his wealth. And if he left some money there, laying there, he dropped something, he dropped his wallet, brother, you lost this. Brother, you forgot this. Even if they gave, in a business dealing, if they gave me too much, brother, you made a mistake. You accidentally gave me too much. So the second thing is their wealth, and then their honor. Now, the first two, we live in a quote-unquote civilized society. We're not out here robbing each other. We're not out here attacking and mugging each other. Okay, but the one about honor, that last one, all too often and all too easily, Muslims step on each other's honor. Whether it is those that are amongst you, those that you know, that are close to you or in your circle or your masjid, or even if it's Sheikh so-and-so online, or even if it's community such and such, or even if it's country of Muslims over there on that side. All those people, they're like this, or they're like that, and talking about them, and disrespecting them, disparaging them. That one right there is all too easy and happens all too often. Because talking about people, especially because they're not in your presence, they're not close to you or whatever, it's that much easier. When their honor is supposed to be sacred. Even if someone else is talking about them in your presence, you shouldn't even tolerate that. Whether you say something, if you remember hadith last week, whoever sees something wrong should change it with your hands. or you should say something, or you should hate it in your heart. If you're not in the situation where you could say or do something, at the very least, you don't sit there and just indulge and listen to like, oh, subhanAllah, really? Oh, it's like that. He did that. He said what? While they're just spilling the tea, and you're just, and you're just sipping. Wa'iyadhu billah. Tayyib. And so, long story short, brotherhood, right, is an important element of Islam. Brotherhood, oftentimes you will even see stories of people who become Muslim because of the brotherhood and the fraternity and the bonds that they either witnessed or even may have experienced before they become Muslim. And that's what encouraged them and inspired them to become Muslim. And I'm sure all of y'all have heard in one way or another, whether you saw something online or maybe you know a revert brother or sister and you hear their story and they tell you, I love the way I saw brothers Muslims and the way that they treated each other or how they helped each other and so on. This is something, brothers and sisters, especially in the context of the masjid, this is very important. Remember, we're not in Malaysia, we're not in Pakistan, we're not in India, we're not in Egypt, we're not in Sudan, we're not in Yemen. In all those places that I'm mentioning, for the most part, they are quite homogeneous. In Yemen, most of the people are Yemeni. And in Malaysia, same deal. And in Pakistan, same deal. Of course, there's other people, there's expats and so on and so forth, but the overwhelming majority, when you go to these places, they are quite homogeneous. But one of the unique things about living in a Western country, you come to a masjid, just look at right now. How many different ethnicities, backgrounds, food, culture, likes, proclivities, so much difference. It becomes that much more important that we have to go out of our way. You don't have to, if I'm from Tamil and another brother's from Tamil, I don't have to go out of my way to get down with him, talk to him, hang out, kick it, because we're from the same country. He knows the same people, he knows the same things. Our aunties and uncles were friends back home, blah, blah, blah. Y'all know each other. It's easy. This brother's from Pakistan, he's from Pakistan. It's easy, or much easier. Afghanistan, same thing. He's from Afghanistan. Oh, you speak Pashto? Of course I speak Pashto. Mashallah, you're from Karbala. Mashallah, or not Karbala, but, Kabul, thank you. No, it's easy. But when somebody is African-American brother, a Caucasian sister, and then you have a brother from Tamil, and then you got a brother from Sudan, and then you got a brother from Somalia, and then you got another from Oromia and from Ethiopia, then it's like, oh, now we're so different. Now we have to go out of our way to build those bonds of brotherhood. Again, you don't have to be the best of friends with everybody. Some people you might just not. But in order to create an environment where we feel comfortable with each other, where we're able to help each other, look out for each other, we have to go out of our way. This is so important, brothers and sisters, especially in a masjid. So, like I said, we'll do our best quickly, inshallah. Maybe one more hadith. So if we try to do 3, I think we'll be here for a while. So this second hadith, in hadith السادس والثلاثون, عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من نفس عن مؤمن كربة من كرب الدنيا نفس الله عنه كربة من كرب اليوم القيامة ومن يسر على معسر يسر الله عليه في الدنيا والآخرة ومن ستر مسلما ستره الله في الدنيا والآخرة والله في عون العبد ما كان العبد في عون أخيه ومن سلك طريقا يلتمس فيه علما سهل الله له طريقا إلى الجنة أو به طريقا إلى الجنة وما اجتمع قوم في بيت من بيوت الله يتلون كتاب الله ويتدارسونه بينهم إلا نزلت عليهم السكينة وغشيتهم الرحمة وحفتهم الملائكة وذكرهم الله في من عنده ومن بطأ به عمله لم يسرع به نسبه رواه مسلم بهذا اللفظ. So this hadith is speaking to the things that you should do. The last one was talking about the things that you don't do with regards to your Muslim brothers and sisters, right? In order to protect those bonds of brotherhood and sisterhood. Whereas this one is talking about the things that you can do to strengthen and build those bonds of brotherhood and sisterhood. First and foremost, the Prophet ﷺ says, and this hadith was also narrated by Abu Hurairah. He said that the Prophet ﷺ said that whoever relieves or alleviates a believer of a distress from their worldly distresses, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will alleviate and relieve their distress from the distresses of the day of judgment or the day of resurrection. So, whenever you have an opportunity to help out your Muslim brother or sister in some worldly thing, then know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take that and alleviate some distress that you will have, which we will all have undoubtedly on the day of judgment, right? So, for example, our brothers and sisters in Libya, or our brothers and sisters in Morocco who experienced those floods and those earthquakes, or in Somalia, who also had recent floods, our brothers and sisters in Yemen, our brothers and sisters in Palestine, wherever it might be, a brother and sister right here in your community, if they need some help, if they need help with rent, if they need help with food, if they need help with their education, if they need, whatever it might be, just know that whatever worldly way that you help them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help you on Yawm al-Qiyamah in a day when we will all desperately need it. Right? Tayyib. And then he goes on, right? That whoever brings ease to one in difficulty, Allah will bring ease to him in this world and in the hereafter. So now you have two things. If you are alleviate to some suffering, some difficulty, some challenge for your brother and sister here in this dunya, you will have real world tangible benefit and ease and facilitation in this life and in the hereafter, right? Now, oftentimes you hear, even unfortunately, our kids who say that's like karma, right? Doing good things coming back to you. Doing bad things to people in the world, and that coming back to you. Islamically, though, we do not attribute that to some blind energy or whatever in the universe. But rather, our deen teaches us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees you at all times. And he is well aware that when you do good for other people and you alleviate challenges and difficulties they have, then Allah will do the same for you. That Allah will do the same for you. The Prophet ﷺ also teaches us, Kama tudinu tudan. Whatever energy you put out there, whatever you do to others, however you treat them, however you are, that same thing will come back to you. And so know that when you support your brothers and sisters, Allah will support you as well. Right? Both in this life and in the next. And then whoever conceals their Muslims' faults, then Allah will conceal theirs in this world and in the hereafter. Now, this one is also important. You happen to see somebody doing something wrong or haram. You see them in some place that they shouldn't be at. You happen to be passing by and you see them doing something wrong. You don't go and say, hey, you know where I saw man, subhanallah, astaghfirullah, I saw them in such and such a place. I saw them doing this and this and this. If it so happens that you see someone, a Muslim brother or sister, in a compromising position that is not a threat, that is not going to harm the Muslims, then if you conceal that, you cover that up. You saw them drinking. You saw them smoking. You saw them doing something wrong. You don't go and tell people, man, this dude is a lush. This dude's drinking. Look at him, so-called righteous brother and so on. You cover that up if you can, you're right? Now, if it's something that will harm other Muslims, it would harm the community, that's different. That's different. I hope y'all understand that. All right? Tayyib. But again, we're trying to keep it brief, so we'll keep moving. But if you do so, you conceal and cover up your Muslim brothers and sisters' faults, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cover up your faults. And you know what your faults are. And I know what mine are. Now you think about that for yourself, and imagine if those were exposed. You want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to cover those up for you. Tayyib. And then he goes on that Allah helps his slaves as long as he helps his brother. Part of brotherhood and sisterhood is service. Serving our brothers and sisters. Serving our brothers and sisters. When they have Ramadan and they have those dinners, right? Don't be that brother or sister who's sitting down waiting for people to bring you the plate, waiting for you to serve you the dates. We should all be trying to rush to do that. We should be trying to, no, brother, here you go. Let me get you your drink. Do you want some more chai? Would you like this? Would you like? No, let me help. It's time to clean up. Let me help. What can I do? How can I help? Let me grab those bottles of water. But oftentimes you see a lot of people just sitting there like, alhamdulillah. Oh, jazakallah khair, brother. Thank you. No, give me more dates. I need a few more. No, a little more biryani, please. This is not enough, is it? It's been a long Ramadan for me. Allah musta'an. But you want to be what? You want to be those brothers and sisters that help. Now, again, this is what you do in your own personal life, but especially at the masjid. This is the culture that we want to create and cultivate in the masjid. Your children, this is what they will see. This is one of the few places where they see this is like an Islamic environment and bubble for them. Obviously, we want to do that on the outside as well, but especially in here, they need to see us doing that. And of course, we should be encouraging them to do that. No, son, we're not sitting down. We're going to get up. The masjid needs to be clean. They ask who can help. We're going to help. We see something there, we're going to clean up and help. They need volunteers. We're going to volunteer. Tayyib. And if in doing so, Allah will help you. You helping the community, you helping a brother or sister who needs some money, who needs a ride, who needs whatever, Allah will help you. And all of us need Allah's help. Then whoever seeks a path, seeking sacred knowledge, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make the way to paradise easy for them. And this, of course, is rooted in the fact that in this life, we need a GPS to get to our destination. And our ultimate destination is where, brothers and sisters? Where do we ultimately want to get to? It's Jannah, paradise. And you cannot get there without a GPS. You cannot get there without a GPS, right? Knowledge of this religion is your GPS to paradise. Knowledge is your GPS to paradise. It will tell you where to go, where to turn, where you should stop, where there's pitfalls, where there's detours. This is what you need. And so it is incumbent upon every single Muslim that we all, doesn't matter if you're a 9-to-5 Muslim, doesn't matter if you drive Uber, it doesn't matter if you have a CEO of a company, doesn't matter if you have a side hustle, doesn't matter if you're a cashier, doesn't matter if you're an engineer, it doesn't matter if you're Imam, Sheikh, all of us need to be seeking sacred knowledge. Do we all need to be Sheikh, Mufti, Maulana? No. But all of us need to be, you have some, I read here, I listen here regularly, that you have a consistent diet of Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It's very important for your spiritual fitness. Sheikh Atif? Just like physically, you got to have a good, healthy diet to maintain your health. You need to have a good diet of Quran and Sunnah to maintain your spiritual fitness. Matter of fact, there's a direct correlation. If you feel your iman going down, if you feel like it's hard for me to wake up for Fajr, I don't feel like it, not because you're tired, but I'm not feeling it, you can probably trace it back to you're not having as much good actions, righteous actions, and from amongst them, you studying and learning the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Tayyib. So the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he goes on and says, and this is the last 2 points. He says that there isn't a group of people that come to the house, from the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the express purpose of yatluna kitab Allah, reciting the book of Allah, and studying it, except that they get 4 things. Sakina, Rahmah, being surrounded by angels, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions them to the angels. So whenever you come and learn and benefit from the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the masjid, as a community and a communal practice, tranquility descends upon that community and the people in that community, and the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And remember, none of us will get into the masjid, to paradise except through the mercy of Allah. Even the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he told his companions this, they said, "Wala anta ya Rasulullah," not even you. He said, "Wala ana illa an yataghammadani Allahu bi rahmati," except that Allah will enshroud me and engulf me and wrap me up in His mercy. It's not how many righteous good deeds you do. The role of deeds, they have a different role. But to get into paradise, to get your foot in the door, it's the mercy of Allah. That is it. Nothing else. Then after that, somebody might say, well, then what do the role of us praying, fasting, all these, then what does that do for us then, if that's not what gets us into paradise? The levels in paradise. The more deeds you do, the higher in paradise you go. But the entrance, it's the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you are studying and learning the deen of Allah, and as a communal effort, This is one of the things that you get the mercy of Allah. And then surrounded by the angels, right? And then, of course, being mentioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this should be more than enough for all of us. But if it's not, and the Prophet ﷺ, he ends it with a warning. Whoever slackens in doing good deeds, man bata'a bihi amalu, lam yusri' bihi nasabu. Just know that if doing good deeds, you're not doing enough. You're lazy, and you feel like, it's too much. Know that you're not going to be hastened on the day of judgment and pushed forward by your lineage or your ethnicity or the country that you came from. That's not going to help you on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Because it's Allah who did that anyways. Allah is the one who made you from country such and such. Allah made you ethnicity such and such, the language that you speak. That's Allah did that. That has no, there's no merit from you. You didn't do anything to get that. But it's what you do that Allah is going to grade you on, what He's going to judge you on, how He's going to measure what type of man or woman you are, right? And all of this, right, obviously speaks to, what does that got to do with brotherhood and sisterhood then? Well, of course, the more you learn and study about the deen, about the legacy of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, and the brotherhood that he had, and the sisterhood that he had, and the fraternity that he had with the Sahaba, and the way that he treated the people around him, and his people, and his followers, then of course, the more you are inclined and likely to do those things yourself in your own personal life, and to share that with others around you, and with your wife, and your children, and your loved ones, and the people in your different circles, and the circles, the spheres of influence that you have, that will spread, right? That's what that has to do with this. So know that, at the end of the day, through brotherhood and sisterhood, in reality, you are helping yourself. كان الله في عون العبد ما كان العبد في عون أخيه. Allah is at the aid and assistance of His servant, so long as that they're the aid and the assistance of their brothers and sisters, in whatever way that might be. That is a big part and parcel of brotherhood and sisterhood. And I would even say that is what brotherhood and sisterhood is. You being my brother or sister, I am at your service. Whether if it's advice, whether it's materially, whether it is in deen, whether even if it's in life advice. If you're hurt, if there's someone who's harming you, I'm there to protect, defend in any way that I can, and vice versa, that we would do that for each other. And so we will stop here. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. And if y'all have any questions, inshallah, we will